So here I'm going to discuss role of NGOs in disaster management. So what is disaster management? You already know. And what's the role of government officials and community in disaster management situation. Today in this session, we are going to understand what is the role of NGOs in disaster management. So before going to the session, let us understand what is an NGO. So NGO, the term, when we expand, it means non-governmental organization. So the organization which is not come under government system. So registered under Society Act or Trust Act or charity institutions, cooperatives, all are registered under Trust Act, and cooperatives, Sauharda Sangagalu, Sahakari Sangagalu. So they are registered under cooperative bodies. So NGO is an independent and autonomous organization. So in no way it is connected to any other organization or government department, any department, and whole and soul it is autonomous. It takes decision on its own, it manages on its own. That's why it is autonomous organization. And NGOs are non-profit organization. This is very important. So when we say NGO, non-governmental organization, the general term means whatever the organization, you take any organization which do not come under government structure is called as non-governmental organization. For example, if you take a hospital, private hospital or private educational institutions, they are also organizations which we call as non-governmental organization, because private organizations do not come under the structure of government. But here, the term NGO includes all organizations which do not come under government control. But in this session, we are concentrating only on social service organizations. Swayam Seva Samsthagalu, Swayam Seva voluntary organizations. So these organizations are non-profit organizations which do not meant for making profit. For example, hospitals, though it is service organization giving service to ill health people, the main focus is service, but they also have the motto of making money. It's a business institution, and whatever the profit they earn from their activities, the members of the organizations share as the share. Even the shareholders get the share from the profit. But in NGOs, voluntary or service organizations, which are registered under Society, Trust and Cooperatives Act, they do not share the profit. Whatever they earn, if they earn, usually there is no earning at all. If they earn something by selling some small things, for example, if the organization running a nursery, selling of seedlings, they get money, that is considered as profit. But here, they do not have the right on this profit. The members have no right on this profit. Again, that money goes to social service activities only. That is why we call it as non-profit organization. So these organizations do not come under the system of and control of government. So government have no control over these kind of organizations, and in no way they are linked to any department or any government structure. They are voluntary in nature. Whatever they want to do, the objectives, goals of the organization, they decide. Their activities, they decide. So there is no compulsion to take any activities by force. That is why it is voluntary. By commitment, with interest and commitment, they come to this sector of social service. That is why it's voluntary in nature. The main motto of NGO is empowerment of underprivileged sector of society and any vulnerable group, disadvantaged group. So empowering them means, in general, overall development of the society. There is inequality in the society in the name of class, caste, or religion, or gender. So some are underprivileged and the other privileged. So those who are underprivileged, they are suffering from that lack of resources. So the main motto of NGO is to empower those kind of people, those communities. So by doing service, by empowering them, they wanted to bring equality in society. And some NGOs also work for ecology. Some work for agriculture and some for social forestry, animal husbandry, or improving ecology, watershed program, or desilting program, whatever it may be. So they mobilize, NGOs mobilize from different sources. Some NGOs take fund from government departments. There are some projects, public-private partnership programs. From there, they mobilize fund. Apart from that, from local, national, and international donors, they mobilize funds. At the same time, from corporate sector also, they mobilize funds for their activities. There are some examples of NGOs, like in Mysore district, we have Mairada, Vivekananda Girijana Kalyana Kendra, Parivartana, Deed, Vimochana in Bangalore, Vistar, Women's Voice, Seva in Gujarat, Lok Jumbish in North India. Likewise, there are so many different organizations working with different groups of people with different kinds of objectives. So, though they are independent autonomous bodies, the bylaws do not violate the laws of nation and constitution. There is some legal framework to follow. So whatever the law says, laws of the nation, they follow that, and they are aligned their bylaws to constitutional aims and goals. In case the organization is receiving funds from foreign donors, any organization, in case they are receiving funds from foreign donors, they have to follow some rules and regulations, guidelines. It is framed by Government of India from Home Ministry. So there is one act, Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. So according to the guidelines of this act, they have to follow the rules, and regularly they have to submit reports and financial statements to Home Ministry periodically, and for any verification, they have to cooperate. If there is any query with regard to finance, with regard to activities, they may come and inspect the organization. That is there. So, though they are autonomous bodies, the bindings, legal bindings are there for the NGOs. NGOs also follows rules of income tax department. They work as per the objectives mentioned in their bylaws. For example, some NGOs work for women's health and nutrition, some for tribal education, some for land rights. Few NGOs work for economic empowerment of rural women and others for environmental issues or for agriculture. Like work for tribal issues, work for Dalit movement. So there are so many issues. Depending upon the situation of the working area, problems or issues in that working area, their interests and their professional skills, they identify some activity as their objective to work. So every NGO has specific geographical area of operation or say limit their work to some villages, to some taluka, few districts likewise. Unlike government, they work in a small, they work with small population. So their appearance is there in some part of the taluka or district or nation, whatever it may be. And staffing pattern is also limited, small organization. They are small organization with small fund and small staffing pattern. So this is the overall introduction of the NGO. So disaster management. What is disaster management? I'm not going to explain in detail because you know better than me, because since last 7 days you are discussing the same matter. So disaster means any occurrence. I'm going to briefly say something about disaster management. Disaster means any occurrence that causes damage, ecological disruption, loss of human life, or deterioration of health and health service on scale sufficient to warrant an extraordinary response from outside the affected area, affected community or area. This is WHO, World Health Organization's definition about disaster. So any damage, any occurrence which causes damage to human life or disrupt human life or animals or ecology, that is called disaster. It has two types. One is natural and the other is man-made. Natural disaster like drought, earthquake, tsunami, forest fire, landslide, blizzard, hurricane, tornado, floods, volcanic eruptions. These are natural disasters, which happens by nature, in nature. Some disaster we can detect early, and the others we cannot detect early. It happens. So man-made disasters like exposure to hazardous substance, like chemical exposure or toxic gas exposure, radiological exposure, failures of dams, resource shortages like food, water in large scale, explosions, terrorism, riots, war. These are all man-made disaster. So there are different phases of disaster. So before 2000, so when we say disaster, it happened. It happened. We are going to rescue the people and work for rehabilitation. That was the situation in the early years. But today, we have, because of technology, we have developed so many things. We can priorly assess the possibility of disaster and we can prepare and if you can prepare and mitigate the reduces the effects of disaster. So the disaster in the disaster management, the disaster we divided into 3 phases. Pre-impact, this is initial or before disaster phase. The warning is given in this disaster. Something is going to happen. Please take care. For example, in coastal area, the cyclone is going to come in next few hours. So please evacuate. Don't go for fishing. That kind of propagation, giving information is going on. You ನೋಡಿರ್ಬೋದು. ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ 40 million hectares of land is identified as flood prone areas. Among that, 18.6 million hectares are regularly and annually affected by flood. So in those situations, we can take precautionary measures. So that is pre-impact phase. Beforehand, what we can do, that is pre-impact phase. So we can open emergency centers, we can give information to people, we can educate people, we can prepare kits and distribute kits to people. These are activities that we can do in this pre-impact phase. The second is impact phase. This is during the occurrence of disaster. Emergency centers has opened, established, and we can evacuate, rescue the people, physical and psychological support to victims we can give. These are the activities at this phase. The third and last is post-impact phase, the recovery stage. This is community is returning to normal situation. We are rehabilitating them. We are giving, we are trying to bring the situation to normal phase. In all the 3 phases, NGOs work hand in hand with government. So in government, for disaster management, we have bodies at different levels. For disaster management, government constituted, national government constituted following disaster management bodies. At national level, National Disaster Management Authority is there. National Disaster Management Authority at national level, that is the apex body to take major decisions with regard to disaster management. This authority is formulated under the chairmanship of Prime Minister. So the body formulate policies and coordinate the implementation and enforcement of policies and approves plan prepared by government departments. Creates guidelines to state authorities and government departments and ensure a timely and effective response to disaster. So it monitors everything as an apex body. It recommends funding and also sometimes channelizes funds, runs awareness campaigns on earthquakes and extreme weather events. The second one is State Disaster Management Authority, that is at state level with the chairmanship of Chief Minister of the state, and there were 8 other members appointed by him. So drawing their responsibilities are drawing state disaster management plan. If something happens at the state level, they draw a management plan, and also the committee is responsible to implementation of national plan. Whatever the national authority gives as a plan, the implementation responsibility belongs to concerned state disaster management authority. and also responsible for coordinating disaster response and risk reduction. So managing disaster at the time of disaster, the rescuing operation, and also reducing the risk. Reducing and give directions for mitigation, readiness, response, and recovery action. For all these four, it give suitable directions. District Disaster Management Authorities is third one at the district level, with the chairmanship of district collector and other district administrative bodies of the superintendent of police, medical officer, and other two districts. So their responsibility is identification of areas of vulnerability. What we have to work to, what are the focus areas that our intervention is needed. So preparing district level disaster management plans, responding to disaster and provide relief, procuring essential resources, whatever resources they need for rescuing operations or rehabilitation. Procurement responsibilities, District Disaster Management Committee. Authority. This is the phases of disaster management, disaster response, recovery, mitigation, and preparation. So, in all the stages, so NGO have specific role to work. So before disaster, preparedness is there. So for example, in Assam, Brahmaputra river runs in the middle of the Assam. Every year it floods. It stretches to so many kilometers. That kind of flood was there. So every year it comes. So every year the the people, they prepare the people, educate the people to move out of that area. And also they construct houses and other things with temporary structures. After the flood reduces, they come back and settle there and do their activities. So this kind of preparedness is there in Assam. So it reduces the risk of the flood. So damages, property, life, that's all reduces because of this preparedness. So this is prior to disaster activity, planning, emergency exercise, trainings. Emergency exercise means in educating people. For example, in IT companies, for fire disaster, they prepare, they train the staff for that situation. Alarm on ಆದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿರ್ತಾರೆ. ಅದನ್ನ ಎಕ್ಸರ್ಸೈಸ್ ಮಾಡಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಮಧ್ಯೆ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ಅವಾಗ ಮಾಡಿ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಇಮಿಡಿಯೇಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಅಲಾರಾಮ್ ಆನ್ ಆದ ತಕ್ಷಣ where to go, how to go, which are those doors, safety doors, ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಗೊತ್ತಿರುತ್ತೆ. So that is emergency exercise ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. So ಇದನ್ನ ಪ್ರಾಕ್ಟೀಸ್ ಮಾಡಿಸುವಂಥದ್ದು ರೆಗ್ಯುಲರ್ಲಿ ಆಗುವಂತ ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಆಗುವಂತ ಕಡೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಇಂಥದನ್ನು ಒಂದು ಎಜುಕೇಶನ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ವಾರ್ನಿಂಗ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಕೂಡ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್ಡ್ನೆಸ್. ರೆಸ್ಪಾನ್ಸ್ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ ಡ್ಯೂರಿಂಗ್ ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ like public warning, emergency operations, rescuing operations, searching, rescuing. These are the activities that NGOs can involve in these kind of activities. Recovery activities like temporary housing, constructing of temporary housing, claims, insurance claims or other claims, long-term medical care, counseling in trauma cases. These can be done by NGOs at recovery stage. Mitigation, that is reducing the risk of disaster. Activities that reduces the effort of disaster. effects of disaster. Sorry. Public education, vulnerability analysis, and developing disaster prevention strategies. These are the activities that NGOs are involved. So, before that, as I already said, before 2000. So, the role of NGOs in disaster management has started changing from providing post-disaster relief to strengthening pre-disaster preparedness. In the previous days, after disaster, NGOs enters for relief kind of work. But today, the pre-preparedness phase is strengthened and the involving NGOs for this preparedness and mitigation. So reducing the risk of disaster through capacity building. So educating and giving skills to people, that is capacity building, public awareness campaigns. So how to act, what are the safety measures, how we can deal with the situation. These are awareness, education, kind of education given to public in awareness campaigns, mock exercise, workshops, conferences. So ಇವೆಲ್ಲದರ ಮೂಲಕ NGO intervention ನ ಈಗ ಸ್ಟ್ರೆಂಥನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಮೊದಲು ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಆಯ್ತು, NGOs ಬರ್ತಾರೆ ರೆಸ್ಕ್ಯೂ ವರ್ಕ್ಗೆ ಅಂತ ಇತ್ತು. ಈಗ ಆಗುವ ಮುಂಚೆ ಇದು ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಪ್ರೋನ್ ಏರಿಯಾ ಅಂತ ಐಡೆಂಟಿಫೈ ಮಾಡಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ NGOs ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್ನೆಸ್ಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಬೈ ಸ್ಟ್ರೆಂಥನಿಂಗ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಕೆಪಾಸಿಟಿ ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಟಿ. So NGOs have also started to collaborate with corporate entities in public-private partnership projects. ಈ ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್ಡ್ನೆಸ್ ಮಾಡುವಾಗ some kind of structures are needed. For example, construction of safety houses in earthquake areas. How to construct? So ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಪ್ರಾಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಇಂದ ಫಂಡ್ ಕೊಡುತ್ತೆ, ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ NGOs ನ ಇನ್ವಾಲ್ವ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಫಾರ್ ಸ್ಕಿಲ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಕನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ವರ್ಕರ್ಸ್, ಫಾರ್ ನಾಲೆಡ್ಜ್. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಇನ್ವಾಲ್ವ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋತಾರೆ. ಸಮ್ಟೈಮ್ಸ್ ಕಾರ್ಪೊರೇಟ್ ಸೆಕ್ಟರ್ ಇಂದನೂ ಕೂಡ ಇನ್ವಾಲ್ವ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ದೇ ಗಿವ್ ಮನಿ ಫಾರ್ ಕನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಅಂಡರ್ ಸೋಷಲ್ corporate social responsibility. There is a rule in business sector. Every corporate officers has to keep 2% of its profit for social services. So it's an ethical code. It's an ethical code and a rule also. So ಅದನ್ನ ಆ ಫಂಡ್ ನ ಕಾರ್ಪೊರೇಟ್ ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ರೆಸ್ಪಾನ್ಸಿಬಿಲಿಟಿಯನ್ನ ಒಂದು ಹೆಡ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅದನ್ನ ಹೋಲ್ಡ್ ಡೌನ್ ಮಾಡಿರ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಈ ಇನಿಷಿಯೇಟಿವ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಆ ಮನಿಯನ್ನ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಕೆಲವು ಕಡೆ ಕೆಲವು ಕಂಪನಿಗಳು ಕೊಡ್ತವೆ. ಸೊ ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಹೌ ಟು ಯೂಸ್ ದಟ್ ಮನಿ ಇನ್ ವಾಟ್ ವೇ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ NGOs ಕ್ಯಾನ್ intervene and take decision with consultation with National Disaster Management Authority. So at all the levels, national, state level and district level, whatever the decisions the authorities take, they always take in consultation with NGOs. So considering the role of NGOs can play in development, especially in encouraging participation of and empowering communities, strengthening democratic institutions, and improving access to basic services like health, education, the government started promoting collaboration with these entities. Why what is the need to involve NGOs? Annodike. What is the need to involve NGOs anta helikoskara? NGOs have good contact with the community. They are committed workers. They have humanitarian considerations. They have skills to work with people. They know how to strengthen the local institutions like panchayat or urban bodies. They have professional skills also there with regard to health. Some doctors are working in NGOs. They are giving medical knowledge, their medical knowledge in the situation, and some psychological health also, counseling, giving psychological support, moral support to the community. So that is why to empowering community to face the situation is very important in any disaster management. So community involvement is very essential, very necessary. To mobilize community and empowering community, NGOs are skilled to empower them. That is why NGOs are needed in disaster management. That is why they take NGOs assistance. So government always want to collaborate with these entities to empower communities and strengthen local governments, panchayats or urban development authorities, and to improve the access to all kind of service, not only health and education, all kind of services. Because the some underprivileged people have less access to services, whether it is health service or education service, whatever it may be. So, to improve the access, NGOs work for the issue. The Planning Commission was designated in 2000 as the nodal agency for NGO state interaction. So, there is always a confusion. To what extent we can involve NGOs, to what extent we have to avoid NGOs. So, that's why the Planning Commission was treated as the nodal agency for this collaboration between NGO and state. NGO and GO. So, a policy was formulated on voluntary sector in 2007. This was the first step in the process of evolving a new working relationship between GOs and NGOs, or government and voluntary organizations. According to the guidelines of this policy, so GOs are involving NGOs in managing disasters. The policy recognizes 3 instruments of partnership. One is consultation through formal process interaction at center, state, and district level. That is consulting NGOs at all levels before taking any decision, before involving into the action, before implementing. They have to take consultation of NGOs. And strategic collaboration to tackle complex interventions where sustained social mobilization is critical over long time. If the intervention needs long-term focus, strategic collaboration was designed, was mentioned in the guidelines. The third kind is project funding through standard schemes, giving schemes. So NGO can run the project on their own by receiving funds from the government. Similar modalities can be explored by national, state, and district disaster management authorities for involvement of NGOs in disaster management. So I already said that at each phases of disaster management, NGOs are involved. So how, in what way their involvement is there in disaster management. NGO play an important role in different phases of disaster management. They engage volunteers and few paid humanitarian professionals. So usually they are volunteers. They do not work for payment. They are volunteers, work with commitment. And some, they are always some professionals are there to guide the volunteers. For example, doctor is needed. So volunteers do not have expertise in medical field. That's why they appoint a doctor who has humanitarian consideration. ಅವನಿಗೆ ಕಮಿಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಇರಬೇಕು, ಮಾನವೀಯತೆ ಇರಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ನ ಪೇಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಇಟ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಬೋತ್ ಅನ್ಪೇಯ್ಡ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಪೇಯ್ಡ್ ವರ್ಕರ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ದೇರ್. So international organization, UN agencies contribute to develop skilled human resources. International organizations, UNIFEM, UNICEF, USAID, ಹಾಗೆ UN agencies ಫಂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಟು ಡೆವಲಪ್ ಸ್ಕಿಲ್ ಆಫ್ ದೀಸ್ ವರ್ಕರ್ಸ್. ಈ ಹ್ಯೂಮನ್ ರಿಸೋರ್ಸ್ ಮೇಲೆ ಅವ್ರ ಸ್ಕಿಲ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ದೇ ಫಂಡ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಮೇಡ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದೀಸ್ ರಿಸೋರ್ಸ್. ಈ ಟ್ರೈನ್ಡ್ ಪರ್ಸನಲ್ ನ ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ಳುತ್ತೆ. NGOs keep good coordination with other stakeholders for better result at work. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಸ್ಟೇಕ್ ಹೋಲ್ಡರ್ಸ್ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. NGOs ಇರ್ತಾರೆ, ಡಿಪಾರ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅವ್ರು ಇರ್ತಾರೆ, ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಟಿ ಲೀಡರ್ಸ್ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ, ಲೋಕಲ್ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ, ಪ್ರೊಫೆಷನಲ್ಸ್ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಸ್ಟೇಕ್ ಹೋಲ್ಡರ್ಸ್ ಜೊತೆ ಒಂದು ಕೋಆರ್ಡಿನೇಷನ್ ಮಾಡುವಂತ ಕೆಲಸವನ್ನ NGOs ಕೆನ್ ಡೂ. ಆ ಕೋಆರ್ಡಿನೇಷನ್ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಇದ್ರೆ ಏರಿಗೆಳಿತು ಕೋಣ ನೀರಿಗೆಳಿತು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ಒಬ್ಬೊಬ್ರು ಒಂದೊಂದು ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ಕೋಆರ್ಡಿನೇಷನ್ ಇಲ್ದೇ ಅದು ಗುಡ್ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ ಕೊಡಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಬೆಟರ್ ರಿಸಲ್ಟ್ ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಕೋಆರ್ಡಿನೇಷನ್ ಇದ್ದು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗ್ತದೆ. ದಟ್ಸ್ ವೈ ಕೋಆರ್ಡಿನೇಷನ್ ಈಸ್ ವೆರಿ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್. ಕೋಆರ್ಡಿನೇಟಿಂಗ್ ಆಲ್ ದಿ ಸ್ಟೇಕ್ ಹೋಲ್ಡರ್ಸ್ ಇಸ್ ದಿ ವೆರಿ difficult task. NGO can do this. Disaster Management Act 2005 defines the roles and responsibility of different stakeholders. ಯಾರ್ಯಾರ್ದು ಏನೇನ್ ರೆಸ್ಪಾನ್ಸಿಬಿಲಿಟೀಸ್ ಅಂತ ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಕ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ಪೆಸಿಫಿಕ್ ಆಗಿ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪ್ಲೈನ್. ಸೊ NGOs role at disaster preparedness. So before disaster occurs, preparedness is an act of preparing for responding to disaster. ಮೊದಲೇ ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್ ಆಗುವಂತದ್ದು. The act involves anticipating, ಮೊದಲೇನೆ ಗುರುತಿಸುವಂಥದ್ದು, ಮಿಟಿಗೇಟಿಂಗ್ ರಿಸ್ಕ್ ಅನ್ನ ರಿಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡೋದು, ಅಂಡ್ ರಿಕವರಿಂಗ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ disaster. That is anticipation, mitigation and recovery. So ಇದು ಎಲ್ಲದಕ್ಕೂ ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್ಡ್ನೆಸ್ ಬೇಕು, ರೆಡಿನೆಸ್ ಬೇಕು. ಸೊ ಆ ಕೆಲಸದಲ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ವಾಲ್ವ್ ಆಗ್ತಾರೆ. ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್ಡ್ನೆಸ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ರೆಡ್ಯೂಸ್. ಮೊದಲೇ ಯಾಕೆ ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? ವೈ ವಿ ಶುಡ್ ಗೆಟ್ ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್ಡ್ ಫಾರ್ ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ ಇಟ್ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ರೆಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ದಿ ಲಾಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಲೈಫ್, ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟಿ ಅಂಡ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ರಿಡ್ಯೂಸಸ್ anxiety to a large extent. So we can take precautionary steps. It includes planning to face disaster, building emergency kit, and skill building, removing hazards, linkage with community, etc. These are the works that NGO can do at preparedness stage. And further, assessment of further basic needs of people affected by disaster and ensure that these are met. ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ ವಾಟ್ ಆರ್ ದಿ ನೀಡ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಮೊದಲೇನೆ ಆಂಟಿಸಿಪೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಅಸೆಸ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಬೇಸಿಕ್ ನೀಡ್ಸ್ ಏನಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್ಡ್ನೆಸ್ ಇರ್ತದೆ. ಹೆಲ್ಪಿಂಗ್ ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ರೀಚಿಂಗ್ ಔಟ್ ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಟೀಸ್ ಟು ಬಿ ಬೆಟರ್ ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್ಡ್ನೆಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ರೆಸ್ಪಾಂಡಿಂಗ್ ಟು disaster. So how to reach communities? It's not easy for government to reach each and every individual in the community. It can be done by NGOs. So NGOs help government to reach out communities for better preparedness. NGO can mobilize existing networks like SHGs, farmer groups, village health committees, village education committees. There are so many committees at the village level. They can mobilize Dalit Sangh, youth forums. These are some community groups. So NGO can mobilize these people to give public awareness at local level. So they work as leaders. So for example, SHG members. If you train SHG members, they spread information to all women or to all families. That's why mobilizing this group is easy for NGOs because they have link with these groups. Help to identify potential areas of vulnerability to disaster. So what are the potential areas of vulnerability in disaster? So identifying those areas help to prepare beforehand. NGOs play a significant role in sensitizing community. So giving awareness and sensitizing community towards the risk of disaster and linking local bodies and corporate sectors. They make linkages with local governing bodies, panchayat or municipal corporations and corporate sector, business houses. So they bring them and sensitize them towards the risky situation of the disaster. While planning state and district administration involve NGOs for optimized and effective planning. So plan ಮಾಡುವಾಗ if we involve NGOs, it will become perfect plan because they have knowledge of practical situation. So NGOs' role in disaster mitigation. How to reduce the risk? Mitigation means reducing the severity of human and material damage caused by disaster. It consists of efforts towards preventing hazardous conditions from becoming disaster or minimizing their effects in the events of disaster. So hazardous conditions, anything. So whatever hazardous conditions are, removing or preventing those conditions from becoming disasters. We leave it, those hazardous conditions as it is. Leakage ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ chemical gas. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಇಮಿಡಿಯೇಟ್ ಆಕ್ಷನ್ ತಗೊಳ್ಳಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅದೊಂದು ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಆಗಿ ರೂಪ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ತುಂಬಾ ಜನಕ್ಕೆ ಅದು ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಏನೇನೋ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. So immediate steps to prevent the hazardous situation. So that is mitigation. It minimizes the effects in the events of disaster. So ಇದು human life risk ಅನ್ನ reduce ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. At the same time loss of property risk ಅನ್ನ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. And damaging nature ಅದು ಕೂಡ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಇಕಾಲಜಿಕಲ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಡ್ಯಾಮೇಜ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಪ್ರಾಣಿಗಳ ಲೈಫ್ ಸೇವ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಇವೆಲ್ಲದಕ್ಕೂ ಈ ಮಿಟಿಗೇಷನ್ ರಿಡ್ಯೂಸಿಂಗ್ ದಿ ರಿಸ್ಕ್ ಈ ಸ್ಟೇಜ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ವರ್ಕ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ವೆರಿ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಹೇಳಿ. ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಅನ್ ಎಫರ್ಟ್ ಟು ರೆಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ದಿ ಇಂಪ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಆನ್ ಪೀಪಲ್, ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟಿ, ಇಕಾನಮಿ ಅಂಡ್ ಇಕಾಲಜಿ. Property protection, modifying the buildings to make them more resistant to natural threats. ಇದು ಹೇಗೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಜಪಾನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ರೆಗ್ಯುಲರ್ ಆಗಿ ಹತ್ಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ದೇ ಡಿಸೈನ್ ದ ಹೌಸಸ್ ಇನ್ ಎ ವೇ ಇಟ್ ರೆಸಿಸ್ಟ್ ದಿ ಸಿಚುವೇಶನ್. ಆ ಅರ್ಥಕ್ವೇಕ್ಗೆ ಸೂಟೇಬಲ್ ಆಗುವಂತ ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್ ಅನ್ನ ಡಿಸೈನ್ ಮಾಡುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಹೊಸ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ನ ಬಳಸಿ ದೇ ಡಿಸೈನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಮಾಡಿಫೈ ದ ಬಿಲ್ಡಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಟು ರೆಸಿಸ್ಟ್ ದಿ ನ್ಯಾಚುರಲ್ ಥ್ರೆಟ್ಸ್. ಈಗ ತುಂಬಾ ಮಳೆ ಆಗುವಂತ ಪ್ರದೇಶಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಮನೆಗಳು ಕೂಡ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ತಕ್ಕಂತೆ ಡಿಸೈನ್ ಮಾಡಿರ್ತಾರೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟಿನ ಪ್ರೊಟೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಫ್ರಮ್ ನ್ಯಾಚುರಲ್ ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಾಗ, ಸೊ ದೇ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಟು ಕೋಪ್ ವಿತ್ ದಿ ಸಿಚುಯೇಷನ್. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ತಕ್ಕಂಗೆ ನಾವು ಕನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ನ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಆಗ ಅದು ಅಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಡ್ಯಾಮೇಜ್ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ಲೋ ಕಾಸ್ಟ್ ಹೌಸಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಮತ್ತೊಂದು ಕಟ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಅರ್ಥಕ್ವೇಕ್ಗೆ ಸೂಟೇಬಲ್ ಆಗುವಂತ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಚರ್ ಇದು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಈ ತರ ಟೆಕ್ನಾಲಜಿ ಬಳಸಿ ದಿ ಮಾಡಿಫೈ ದಿ ಕನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಷನ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್. ಅದೇ ರೀತಿ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಕೂಡ ನಾವು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. Train construction worker to adopt new techniques for construction and eco-friendly and disable-friendly structures. So constructions worker ಏನಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ, ರಿಹ್ಯಾಬಿಟೇಷನ್ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ಬೋದು ಅಥವಾ ಪ್ರಿಪೇರ್ಡ್ನೆಸ್ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ಬೋದು. ವೈಲ್ ಕನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಷನ್ NGOs involve and adopt new techniques and also train the construction workers to construct natural threat resistant constructions, eco-friendly constructions and disable-friendly constructions. ಡಿಸಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಇದ್ರೆ ಇಮಿಡಿಯೇಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಹೇಗೆ ಬೇಕು ಆ ರೀತಿಯಾದಂತ ಕನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ನ ಅವರು ರೆಕಮೆಂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಈ ಟ್ರೈನಿಂಗ್ ನ NGOs can give. So protecting ecosystem from soil erosion, wetland restoration, watershed management, these are the works that can be done by NGOs. So always in watershed, soil erosion, protection of water sources, ಈ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಕೆಲಸಗಳಿಗೆ government always involve NGOs. Awareness to follow safety measures like wearing masks during man-made disasters like toxic gas leakages and all those things. So they train staff to face emergencies. Taking proper measures to dispose waste, sanitation, proper sanitation and drinking water, safe drinking water to prevent further complications. Disaster site ಅಲ್ಲಿ ವೇಸ್ಟ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪರ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಬೇಕು. ಸೇಫ್ ಸ್ಯಾನಿಟೇಷನ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಸೇಫ್ ಡ್ರಿಂಕಿಂಗ್ ವಾಟರ್ಸ್ಗೆ ಅರೇಂಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಫರ್ದರ್ ಕಾಂಪ್ಲಿಕೇಶನ್ಸ್, ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಂದು ಎಪಿಡೆಮಿಕ್ ಬರ್ಬೋದು, ಕಾಯಿಲೆಗಳು ಶುರು ಆಗ್ಬೋದು, ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ದು ಇಂಪ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಇನ್ನಷ್ಟು ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಈ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ NGOs can work to reduce the risk, further risks. Advocacy with local government, corporates and policymakers to provide emergency needs of the community. So ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ they sensitize different kinds of needs of the community. So ಮಹಿಳೆಯರಿಗೆ ಸ್ಯಾನಿಟೇಷನ್ಗೆ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಾ ಸ್ಪೆಷಲ್ ಕೇರ್ ಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಅಥವಾ ಕೆಲವನ್ನ ಸೆನ್ಸಿಟೈಸ್ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇರುತ್ತೆ NGOsಗೆ, ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ದೇ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಕಾಂಟ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ವಿತ್ ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಟಿ. ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಬೇಕಾದ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆನ ವೆದರ್ ಇಟ್ ಇಸ್ CSR ಫಂಡ್ ಇಂದ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಲೋಕಲ್ ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಇರ್ಬೋದು, ಅವ್ರ ಜೊತೆ ಕೂತು ಅಡ್ವೊಕೇಸಿ ಮೂಲಕ ಅದನ್ನ ಸಾಲ್ವ್ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಟ್ರೈ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ NGOs. ಯಾಕೆಂದ್ರೆ ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಗೆ ಈ ಕೆಲವು ಸೂಕ್ಷ್ಮಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗಲ್ಲ, ಡೈರೆಕ್ಟ್ ಕಾಂಟ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ದೇ ಆರ್ ನಾಟ್ ಕೇಪಬಲ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಪಾಸಿಬಲ್ ಫಾರ್ ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಟು sensitize those basic needs of the community, affected community. NGOs can do that in a better way, and after recognizing, identifying those problems, so it sit with government officials and other funding agencies and have a discussion, they convince them and solve the problem. So during climatic change, NGOs work to reduce work for it. For example, carbon emission by giving awareness, propagating rainwater harvesting, promoting social forestry, and so on. So these are long-term strategies. It's not like a disaster happened and we are doing this. This is not like this. This is long term. So we are anticipating so many things can happen because of damage to our natural system, nature. So climate is changing. So what are the negative effects of climatic change? So how to reduce that risks? So, what are the steps that we can take to reduce the risks? So how to mobilize community, how to educate community, how to motivate community to take those steps. This aspect, the NGO can work properly and mobilize community and motivate community in a proper way. Role of NGOs in disaster response. Role of NGOs in disaster response. It is, if disaster happened, immediately what can be done? That is immediate response to the disaster. It's a phase of disaster management where action taken before, during, after disaster to save lives, ensure safety, and help people to meet their needs, like warning and evacuation, moving the people from that spot. So alerting people to potential disaster. This is happening, please evacuate. So, and help them to leave the area. So making alternative arrangements, and helping people to move fastly to that area. These are the kinds NGOs are involved to educate and warn people. Search, rescue, this is at the time of disaster, during disaster. Searching affected people, victims of disaster, and rescuing them, finding and providing help to people who are trapped and injured, giving immediate help to keep people alive. So, avrige first aid or medical help, these are the things or immediate needs of the disaster victims. Giving immediate assistance like food, water, shelter to victims, taking care of sanitation, waste disposal, medical assistance, and psychological and moral support also. Making damage assistance. Making damage assessment. So what are the loss? Assessing the amount of loss. It may be property or infrastructure, those kind of things the NGOs are involved to make proper assessment of damage during the disaster. Repair and rebuilding of damaged roads. So, to an extent, it's a long-term strategies, efforts, repairing the affected housing, roads, whatever it may be, and rebuilding the infrastructures. That is the responsibility of government, and to some extent, companies or business houses also help to build houses for affected people, and NGOs can coordinate and monitor the work. So this is the last slide. So maintaining ethics. This is very important for NGOs. So ensure respect of human being. That is the first thing. Victim and kudle, we cannot treat them as animals. So respect human beings. That is the main ethical aspect in disaster management. So treat them as human beings and give right to receive assistance. All the people or all the affected people have the right to receive assistance. It's their right. It's not by sympathy we are giving. So they have a right to receive, and it is our duty to give assistance. That kind of mentality should be there. That kind of attitude should be there at the time of helping the people. Take steps to minimize the harm. So, if something, my effort is doing some harm, don't do that. Let's minimize the harm. Take steps to minimize the harm. Respect culture and customs. ನಿಮ್ಗೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಗೊತ್ತಿದೆ, at the time of ಕೋವಿಡ್ ಇಂದ ಸತ್ತವ್ರದ್ದು ಡೆಡ್ ಬಾಡೀಸ್ ಸಂಸ್ಕಾರಗಳನ್ನ ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ತುಂಬಾ ಸಂಘರ್ಷಗಳಾಯ್ತು. ತುಂಬಾ ಕೆಟ್ಟದಾಗಿ ನಡೆಸ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರು, ಅದು ಒಂದು ವಸ್ತು ಅನ್ನೋ ತರ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು, ಹ್ಯುಮ್ಯಾನಿಟೇರಿಯನ್ ಕನ್ಸಿಡರೇಷನ್ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಈ ಥರ ಎಲ್ಲ ಆಪಾದನೆಗಳಿರ್ತು. ಸೊ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲೂ ಎವ್ರಿ ಇಂಡಿವಿಜುವಲ್ has respect or has some kind of affection towards his or her culture and customs. We have to respect that situation. So respect each custom, culture, every religion, every community, every class, every gender is very important. That kind of ethics they maintain. That's why NGOs are very close to people. It's because of these ethical norms. So there are some NGOs. So any NGO cannot enter the disaster site to work. So hinde adittu, anybody can work for it, but iga hagilla. So only the recognized, identified by National Disaster Management Authority can work for disaster. We can mobilize resources and hand over those resources to this authority. If the need is more, they can form alliances. They can form temporary alliances. Because of that disaster, they come together and form a temporary body to work for it. So government has recognized some NGOs to work for disaster management. So they can name to work in this particular disaster. ಸೊ ಯಾರ್ಯಾರೋ ಬಂದು ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ. ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ನಾಮಿನೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಲಿಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿರೋದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಗೌರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಯಾರನ್ನ ಸೆಲೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೋ, ಆಯ್ಕೆ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೋ, ಯಾರಿಗೆ ಆ ಸ್ಕಿಲ್ ಇದೆ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಆಯ್ಕೆ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. ಅಂತವ್ರು ಮಾತ್ರ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ, ಉಳಿದವರು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗಲ್ಲ. ಬಟ್ ದೇ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಇಂಡೈರೆಕ್ಟ್ಲಿ help those bodies, those NGOs by mobilizing resources. For example, media ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ they can mobilize resources. ನೀವು ನೋಡಿರ್ಬೋದು, ರೆಸ್ಕ್ಯೂ ಟೈಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅಡ್ವರ್ಟೈಸ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗಳು ಇಷ್ಟು ಕೊಟ್ರು, ಇವರು ಅಷ್ಟು ಕೊಟ್ರು ಅಂತ ಪ್ರತಿ ವಾರ ಹಾಕ್ತಾರೆ, ಒಂದು ಫಂಡ್ ಪೂಲಿಂಗ್. ಸೊ ಆ ಫಂಡ್ ಅನ್ನ CM ಫಂಡ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಥವಾ ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಫಂಡ್ಗೆ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ದೇ ಡಿಸೈಡ್ ಹೇಗೆ ಖರ್ಚು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ. ಅಟ್ ದಿ ಸೇಮ್ ಟೈಮ್ ಮೆಟೀರಿಯಲ್ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಕೂಡ ಮೊಬಿಲೈಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಕ್ಲೋತ್ಸ್, ಫುಡ್, ಮೆಡಿಸನ್ಸ್ ಇವುಗಳನ್ನ. ಬಟ್ ಇದಕ್ಕೂ ಕೂಡ ಆ ಕಮಿಟಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ದೇ ಚೆಕ್ ದಿ ಕ್ವಾಲಿಟಿ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಮೆಟೀರಿಯಲ್. ಫುಡ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಏನೇನೆಲ್ಲ ಕೊಡೋ ಹಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು ಲೇಬಲ್ ಇರಬೇಕು, ಸೇಫ್ಟಿ ಲೇಬಲ್ ಇರಬೇಕು. CFTRA ಇಂದ ಸೇಫ್ಟಿ ಲೇಬಲ್ ಕೊಡುವಂಥದ್ದಿದೆ. ಅವರು ಕಳಿಸ್ಕೊಡುವಂಥ ಪ್ಯಾಕ್ಗಳು ಇರ್ತವೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಬಟ್ಟೆಗಳು ಕೊಡುವಾಗ ಒಂದು ನಾಮ್ಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಮೆಡಿಸನ್ ಕೊಡುವಾಗ ಲಾಸ್ಟ್ ಡೇಟ್ ಆಗಿರೋದನ್ನ ಕೊಡುವಂಥದ್ದು, ಅಥವಾ ಯೂಸ್ಡ್ ಹೊರಗಡೆ ತೆಗೆದಿಟ್ಟಂಥದ್ದು, ಅದಕ್ಕೆಲ್ಲ ಒಂದು ಚೆಕಿಂಗ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಅದು ಯಾವುದೋ ನೇರವಾಗಿ ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಸೈಟಿಗೆ ಹೋಗಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ದಿ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಕಮಿಟಿ ವಿಲ್ ಟೇಕ್ ಕೇರ್ ಆಫ್ ಆಲ್ ದೋಸ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ಸ್. ಈವನ್ ಫಂಡ್, ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಕೂಡ ಒಂದು ದಿನದ ಸ್ಯಾಲರಿಯನ್ನು ಕಾಂಟ್ರಿಬ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. So we contribute a day's salary to COVID situation, to manage COVID situation. ಆತರ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ಗಳಿದ್ದಾವೆ, ಸುನಾಮಿ ವಿಕ್ಟಿಮ್ಸ್ಗಾಗಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ. ಬಟ್ ಅದನ್ನ ಟು ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ ದೋಸ್ ಫಂಡ್ಸ್ ದಿ ಕಮಿಟಿ ಟೇಕ್ ದಿ ರೆಸ್ಪಾನ್ಸಿಬಿಲಿಟಿ. ಸೊ ದೀಸ್ ಆರ್ ಸಮ್ NGOs ವರ್ಕಿಂಗ್ ಫಾರ್ ಡಿಸಾಸ್ಟರ್ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಇನ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ. Rapid Response, Sakal Relief Fund, Care India, Smile India, Hindrise, Helpage India, Axfam, ActionAid, Ramakrishna Mission, Akshaya Patra Foundation, and there are so many other small organizations, NGOs are there. Here, Axfam and ActionAid are funding agencies. Actually, they fund for different objectives: women's empowerment, tribal empowerment, or health issues, economic empowerment, so many issues. They also help for disaster management. Axfam and ActionAid India. And Ramakrishna Mission is a part of their work. Akshaya Patra, they are involved in the educational aspect. And they also work give food assistance to disaster management situation.